Welcome back. Thank you very much for staying with us. Youth Capital officially requested to the Acting Director General of the Department of Employment and Labour and the Commissioner of the Unemployment Insurance Fund to release the funds for the Basic Education Employment Initiative. This was in a letter dated Friday, the 16th of August 2024. Now, during the annual budget speech in 2024, Minister Godongwana announced the extension of the 61.4 billion allocated for employment programs over the medium term. Of this amount, 7.4 billion has been identified for the Presidential Employment Initiative. Later in March, it was communicated with Youth Capital that the funds for the Presidential Employment Stimulus would come from the UIF. We're now in September, and Youth Capital says details haven't been shared with them. Project lead at Youth Capital Kristal Duncan-Williams joins us live now to discuss this further. Good afternoon, Kristal. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. Let's start at the beginning with the request to the acting DG and just work our way to the current status. Just talk us through the first letter you sent.
Sure. So way back in March of last year already, we started hearing rumors that the funding for the Presidential Employment Stimulus was going to be cut. Fast forward to July of 2023, there was clear indications that this, the funding wasn't going to be extended. And included in the Presidential Employment Stimulus was the Basic Education Employment Initiative, where almost, 200,000 young people in one phase alone were given short employment opportunities as teaching and general assistants at schools. And so we embarked on a campaign called Fund Our Futures. And at that stage, ahead of the MTBPS in October last year, we wrote a letter to the DG of Finance, as well as we had a public call for a petition. Move forward to the budget speech in February of this year. By that stage, we had 25,000 people who had signed the petition calling for the extended funding, which gets you to the intro that you gave now, where we were all celebrating because we thought, great, the government and National Treasury has listened to young people, have listened to the citizens of South Africa, and have continued the funding. But unfortunately, this money is just not being forthcoming. And despite numerous attempts on our part, as well as other people that we're aware of, there just isn't clarity on when the money is going to be released. And that's why we sent this letter.
Yes, so you've communicated with UIF. They have confirmed that indeed the 7.4 billion was allocated?
Yes, we've spoken to people within the presidency and the Department of Basic Education who are obviously in charge of rolling out the program. And so that money was definitely due to come from UIF funds. That much we are sure of. Sending the letter, as you said, back in August, we said we'd give them 7 working days. We didn't get a response. We followed up. We still didn't get a response. And at that stage, we published the letter on our website, as well as sending, an update publicly to everybody who had signed the petition through our partnership with Amandla.mobi.
Unemployment, Kristal, has reached unintelligible levels in the country. One would assume there would be departments that would act with speed when it comes to matters or initiatives that can address this unemployment scourge. So what exactly have they said to you?
They haven't said anything. What we understand is this is a new approach to take money from the UIF funding. And so we understand that there was some legalities and some paperwork that had to be signed. And we also know because of elections, Parliament itself and ministers were very busy. And so we've given them quite a bit of grace and understanding that 2024 is not a normal year with national elections. But to have let it drag on for this long is unacceptable. Hundreds of thousands of young people, as you say, are looking for a first work experience and have lost out on that this year. And on top of that, you have learners in school and teachers who have lost out on having an extra set of hands in the classroom, which we know from research improves learning outcomes, particularly in the foundation phase.
So this delay has a ripple effect. Now, let's talk about the impact, though, that the Presidential Employment Stimulus has had on our economy since its inception. What does data reveal about this?
So over 1 million work opportunities have been afforded to young people as well as non-young people through other parts of the Presidential Employment Stimulus, like the Social Employment Fund, as well as the National Youth Service. We know even through the National Youth Service, where the numbers are smaller than the Education Assistant Program, that there's been a lot of transition of young people out of these experiences into either a hustle or formal employment or going back to study further. We know more broadly that having a first work experience really improves young people's chances of getting another work opportunity. And that's why these employment programs are so important, even though they're short term. They give young people work experience, they give them training, and they give them access to social networks that help them find a next opportunity. All things that millions of young South Africans desperately need to get their foot in the door of the labour market.
I'm glad you explain it so well, because many people have been criticizing and asking what is a work opportunity versus work itself. But you're saying that nevertheless, it does give them the experience that is much needed when they go out to actually get permanent employment. So that it does, to a certain extent, play a significant role, even the stimulus itself, because when we had the president detailing what was done in the 6th administration, and he spoke of the presidential stimulus and some of these initiatives that created the work opportunities, many seem to just write it off. But you're saying it's been quite impactful.
Absolutely. We know from research that was done through SALDRU at the University of Cape Town as well, that it also stimulates local economies. They looked at spending at a retailer across economies, small township economies across the country. And what you see is that during the time that the people are on the Teachers Education Assistant program, their spending increased. But not only during the program, but up to 3 months after the program, their overall spending at this particular retailer or food retailer was still increased. So what that tells you is that money from these short-term work opportunities goes into the pockets of recipients, many of them young people, which they spend back in their communities, which stimulates local economies and also creates jobs. So we have to think about this entire circular effect and not see these programs as handouts. When done well, they have real impacts for both young people and their communities.
Kristal, we'll most certainly reach out to Treasury and the Department of Labour on this matter, because youth unemployment, as stated, is a serious problem in our country, and any initiative or program that seeks to address this must be rolled out as soon as possible. Thank you again for joining us on The Full View. That's Kristal. She's project lead at Youth Capital.